Hey guys, I just went ahead and finished Armored Core 6, so I thought I'd go ahead and give you a review with a little breakdown of my pros, my cons, and then give you the final verdict of the game. But first things first, let me get my bias out of the way. In case you missed it, this was my reaction 8 months ago to the game being announced.
No fucking way. A new Armored Core? Yo, what? What the fuck?
And yes, I did proceed to cry like a little baby back bitch because I grew up playing Armored Core. I love the series and I played the shit out of it on the PS2. So, uh, I'm gonna try my best to review this as somebody that's not a super fan of the series, but do know that I most certainly have that bias of being a huge Armored Core fan since I grew up playing it, and that's how I know FromSoft. That's how I first learned about FromSoft, not the Souls games or anything like that. But I'm gonna try and keep this review quick because I've recorded this, no joke, 5 or 6 times, and every time it's like 30 minutes long. So I'm gonna try and be fast for you, especially because I'm doing this on my break from work. So let's get right into the pros, okay? First things first, the gameplay, the fluidity of the combat, all of that is A1. It feels incredible. Just flying around in all of the different mechs is just super duper enjoyable. And every single build that I tested, I've probably at this point tested like 6 or 7 very different builds from one another. All of them felt incredible to use. And as an Armored Core fan, I'm happy to say that they did it justice when it comes to the AC customization. There, especially by the end of the game and going into New Game Plus, you just have so many choices, just like so many variations of AR, burst AR, shotguns, everything under the sun. There's just like a million different types of missiles even. Like you can customize your type of missile even. It is super super in depth, and I'm really enjoying it. I decided to settle on a lightweight, over 300 boost speed reverse joint mech, rocking a laser rifle to keep pressure, 2 missile launchers on my back, as well as a melee weapon to take advantage of them when they're staggered. And I basically stuck with that build the entire game, other than when I needed to adapt it to the situation. Um, I also think it's worth saying that the length of this game is perfect. It took me about 11 to 12 hours to finish the game, and that's with 102 deaths, so definitely was dying a fair few times. I don't know if that's good or bad, I'll be honest. I think it's probably pretty good, but who knows? I wasn't running like the tank Gatling gun or dual Zimmerman build or anything that was super broken. In fact, I was trying to avoid using stuff that was, that people online were saying was super broken because I kind of just like to do my own thing for the most part in these games. That's the fun for me, is making my own build, whether it's Diablo, Armored Core, or whatever. I like to do my own thing. And my build sufficed for the most part. I also think that the sound is incredible for the game. Like, the soundtrack is really really good. The voice acting is really good, even if the story kind of isn't, but we'll touch on that in the cons. But yeah, I really thought that the sound design for the weapons, for just your AC in general, as well as the music and the voice acting, was incredible. But let's get into the cons. First things first, the graphics. The graphics are not great in the game, but I'm a simple guy. I either think that if your game is going to not look the best, it needs to run buttery smooth, or if your game looks really, really good, I'm fine with, meh performance. And I'm happy to say that this game has great performance. And for me, that's all I care about. But I know a lot of people out there care about graphics, and this game, it doesn't look great. Some of the particle effects look pretty good, but the actual texture work, especially when you're in a map, and the map design and the textures on, you know, everything from walls to floors to some of the skyboxes, is a bit rough, I'll be honest. So graphics not the best, but on the bright side, the performance is stellar. On my machine, which is a 3080 Ti, a Ryzen 7 5800X, 48 gigs of RAM, and an NVMe SSD that the game's installed to, I was sitting at a all maxed out 1440p at 144 FPS basically the entire time. If I got a dip, it would be down to like 120 FPS. Like, it ran butter smooth, and it was incredible. Another con is that I was super excited to play this game on mouse and keyboard, because obviously that wasn't really an option before, and I'm one of those nerds that does aim labs every single day. You know, I play a lot of competitive shooters on mouse and keyboard, like Valorant and Apex, so I'm somebody, you know, with very, very good aim, and I was excited to kind of bring that into Armored Core, but this game just plays way better on a controller. And I don't know if it's a bug or not. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that it's a bug, but when you use the hard lock-on mouse and keyboard, if an enemy moves too fast, it will break your lock-on entirely, and you will have to re-lock onto them. You'll have to move your mouse around and find the target, and, you know, that doesn't sound that bad, but a lot of the bosses in the game are very fast, and especially one of them, the final boss that I got with the Fires of Raven ending, they will teleport behind you. And you'll be locked onto them on mouse and keyboard. They'll teleport behind you, and then you'll kind of have to just like swipe your mouse around and try and find them. Whereas I played the fight on controller, and if you're locked onto them, when they dash behind you, your camera will automatically do a 180 onto them. So I feel like this is a bug for mouse and keyboard controls, but I don't know for sure. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that, and I'm going to tell you guys, play the game on controller. It plays much better on controller. I was also kind of hoping that the manual aiming would be good, because like I said, I'm probably in the top like 1% or so of aimers out there when it comes to mouse and keyboard aiming. I'm a total dweeb for stuff like that. And I was excited because I saw that there was manual aiming, and I was hoping that, you know, maybe I could go ahead and bring my aim skills into the game, you know, not use the lock-on, but that's just not very viable. There's especially like for PvP, people move way too much. They move erratically, and most importantly, against the bosses, they do some crazy horse shit that is just not possible to, you know, track yourself. So you kind of have to use the auto lock-on. Another problem that I have with the game is the difficulty ramp up. So like I said, I died 102 times, and about 70 of those deaths were from two bosses in the game. One of them's called like Cell 140, and then the other one was the final boss for me, which I won't say their name to spoil it, but like I said, I got the Fires of Raven ending, so that'll tell you which boss it was. And I just found that the difficulty spike in those two fights was insane. It was the equivalent of like walking up, you know, taking a little hike up a hill in your backyard versus going straight to climbing Mount Everest. I mean, it was insane, the difficulty scaling. And I'm somebody that was, like I said, adapting my mech to the situation, changing my mech around, but it wasn't until I actually read a YouTube comment on a guide that said, oh yeah, the best way to beat this boss is to just stop shooting it, and to just wait until it does one move that you can punish, and then capitalize on that one move. And for me, that's just really poor design. I don't want to have to just sit there and not attack until the enemy does an attack that allows me to punish them. And I felt that way with both of the fights. Both of the fights, your opportunity to punish the boss is so minute, because their recovery is so fast and their auto dodge to your shit is so fast, that it can be very frustrating with the vast majority of the builds in the game to actually punish those. And I didn't really have too many problems with Balteus, but a lot of people struggle with him as well. I didn't think he was that bad, but that's because, you know, I knew to use pulse weaponry on his shields. But a lot of people really struggle for him and drop the game entirely because of that. So there are a couple huge difficulty spikes in the game, and I think that the issue with it is because in Dark Souls games, you know, at least to my recollection, all of the hardest bosses in the games are optional bosses, right? With the exception of like Sekiro. You know, Sekiro has some very hard bosses that are mandatory, but you know, if you're looking at Nameless King and Dark Souls 3, or like a lot of these like very hard bosses in FromSoft games, Millennia and Elden Ring, right? They're entirely optional bosses, and that's not the case in this game. A lot of these, you're just kind of destined to fight whether you want to or not, and you just have to kind of just smash your head into a wall until you find out what works. And I think a lot of people are going to drop off on the game. I don't know how many people have completed it entirely because of the various endings, but I think it's probably fair to say about 15 or 20% of people have completed it. And that's pretty low. Like typically on average for a game, you're looking at 30%. And at least according to the Steam achievements. Other platforms might be different. So I think that there is a difficulty problem with people just, you know, kind of hitting a wall and not really knowing what to do. And I think something that could remedy this is just a tip system. I think tips would be really, really good. So if you just went ahead and told people, like when they're fighting Baltes, hey, pulse weaponry is really good against shields. Maybe think about some pulse weaponry, right? Stuff like that that would help people. Or against Cell 140, just being like, hey, if you continuously attack, then she's going to, you know, continuously dodge. So you probably want to, you know, wait for the right time. I think stuff like that would be really, really useful for the players. I also think that, and this is my final negative with the game, is that I think it feels really bad to have no iframes in a game in, you just saw I just got absolutely stinkered there. But it feels really bad to have no iframes in a game in 2023. You know, back when I was playing Armored Core in PS2 days, this wasn't really the norm. Iframes weren't really a thing to my recollection, but now they're in practically every single action game out there. So to have a game like Armored Core where your boost is entirely just a speed increase, I think that that really feels kind of bad at some points, because especially when you're running a lightweight mech like me and you're very fast and you have the highest quick boost thrust possible, right? A lot of times it still feels like your dash does absolutely nothing because the enemies have just preposterously good tracking on their attacks. Like the tracking in the game is just crazy good, to the point of a lot of times there's not even really a reason to dodge. Like, there's not a reason to dodge at all. And that's why, you know, for some of the fights, people just go tank and they load up on guns, because there's not really a point in trying to dodge when you can't dodge. There's no iframes or anything like that. And so here would be my recommendation. My recommendation for them would be one of two options. One, just add a little bit of iframes that scales with the booster that you're using. So the higher that your quick boost thrust, the more iframes you would have. Similar to a Dark Souls 2 iframe in your roll scaling with a stat, right? And that way you could make it so like only the lightest weight builds running the best boosts and stuff like that can actually have like a feasible amount of iframes to dodge things. Or, and I think this is actually a better solution, is incorporate a 90% damage reduction to the parry on pulse shields. Now, pulse shields are in the game, but I don't see anybody use these things. And they have a unique mechanic where the moment that you block with them, your block is actually stronger than the rest of the time that you're blocking. However, it's not stronger by much. Like, from everything that I saw, it was the difference between taking 4,000 damage to a hit and taking like 2,800 or 3,000 damage a hit. So like a 25, maybe 30% damage reduction. And in this game, I mean, as you can see, I have 9,000 health. So taking 3,000 damage instead of 4,000 damage is really not going to do me much good, right? I'm still going to die in 3 hits regardless. So I think that if they incorporated like a 90, like an 80 to 90% damage reduction on the parry part of the shield, I think that would actually feel really, really good when you're fighting these bosses, because a lot of the times, like the Cell 140 fight, they'll do a slash attack and it will send this energy slash at you, right? And that thing tracks like incredibly. And you can't avoid it if you're, if you time it perfectly where you're going one way and then the moment it comes out, you dash the other way. You can definitely avoid it. But I think it would actually feel really good if you could put on a pulse shield and then just like parry that, right? And not take a lot of damage from it. And then that could also give you extra time that you can punish the bosses in the game. I think that would work perfectly. But that's really my only gripe with the game, is I think that there is a little bit of difficulty scaling problems. Like some of the some of the fights are just so much harder than everything else in the game, to the point I think a lot of people are going to quit because they're not optional like they are in, other FromSoft games. They are mandatory, man. You gotta beat Balteus. You gotta beat Cell 140. And if you look at the comment sections or like discussions about the game and stuff, a lot of people are complaining and saying that they're quitting. So this does raise an interesting question about difficulty in games like Armored Core and what really is difficult and what is not difficult. Donkey has kind of posed this question about the game. Like if you have an overpowered build that you can run, is the game now like not hard? Is it easy? And this is a very complicated, sort of moral quandary that I do want to discuss in a future video. So I am actually going to make another video entirely dedicated to talking about this, and not specific to Armored Core, but Armored Core is definitely the thing that's starting the conversation about how can you actually judge a game's difficulty. Can you judge it based off the fact that there are overpowered things in the game that make the game significantly easier? Or do you just judge it from the fact that, from like a normal build perspective, and just, is it hard for a normal person, right? And not somebody that's, doing the meta and maxing out and yada yada, right? So I think it is an interesting conversation, but unfortunately I don't want this to be like a 30-minute video, so I'm not going to touch on that in this, but keep your eyes tuned on the channel and I'll make a video dedicated to it and talking about that. But anyway, overall, I think the game's a perfect length. I feel like the customization is fantastic, and while the difficulty scaling can be bad at times, and it feels really bad to not have iframes, like for example, iframes would make this section so much more enjoyable, because as it is right now, you just kind of have to slowly work your way down, and it's kind of a time-consuming, not very fun mission if you play it how it's ideal, which is to slowly work your way all the way down. I think it could be much more fun and interesting if the player could iframe through that, or use a pulse shield to negate a lot of that damage with a parry. But anyway, I did thoroughly enjoy my time with the game. I think it has good replay value because of the new game plus, and because it does add extra missions and options to missions that are quite interesting. Overall, I think that the game is most certainly worth your time and your money, and I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. I think it definitely has issues, but I don't think that they're making it, something that you should avoid or anything like that. And for me, a 5 is an average game, 6 is above average, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is amazing, and 10 is a near perfect masterpiece. I don't think this game is quite to like the amazing caliber. I think if you're an Armored Core fan like me, it most definitely is. But as a normal human being that has no affiliation, with the Armored Core property, I don't think that it's quite a 9 or a 10. I think it is still a great game for you, though. But obviously, if you're an Armored Core fan like me, this thing is a fucking 10 out of 10. Even if I was raging on some of the boss fights, of course it's a 10 out of 10, dude. It's a new Armored Core. Are you kidding me? But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see all of you in the next video. This is Rooney. Bye-bye.